posited by the defender slash in the textbook itself. And then in another context, like for instance, if there was a group of physicists or biologists or cognitive scientists who were trying to use debate as a tool to investigate phenomena or different topics of study within their field, then of course they would use their textbooks, right? Or somehow, it's probably something that really would be a valuable resource to start working on compiling some kind of hierarchy like the one we have for the forms here and within the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, covering wide ranges of topics, many involving psychology and different types of mental factors and different types of qualities or characteristics of different mental states, and there's a variety of types of hierarchies within those classes of phenomena. And so doing that for sort of each scientific field, for economics, for history, for political science, for the social sciences, psychology, Western psychology, that would also be something very valuable, right? And then it could have a similar, then we could debate about it with some kind of framework. And I just want to say then, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would say that actually a lot of the time I found that we're not quite using, we're not so used to actually making definitions in our fields, and then we're actually talking past each other a lot in the reality of academic work. At the same time, I would also say that what I think is that in experimental fields like cognitive science and psychology, we're often using operational definition. So whichever, sustained attention is whatever I'm measuring in this sustained attention task. And then of course we're equating it with a mental process that happens also outside the lab, but whether that applies is not entirely sure. So that's an interesting thing to think about in terms of these definitions, to think about how does it go beyond like the simple definitions that we're using here. Meanwhile, I think YouTube was not working right now, so I'm not sure whether we need to work on that, or otherwise I guess it will be.
Maybe just reload it.
Now we're live. Yeah, we're live. Okay, good.
So, and the funny thing there is, if you kind of, again, just taking a logical approach and think about what Marika just said for that kind of operational definition, where you're just defining something as what we're studying in this or that task. Now, the funny thing is, you could maybe point out a flaw or investigate a possible flaw, I should say, which is that, well, if you haven't actually properly identified that phenomenon in question already, then how do you know that's actually what you're studying? Or in other words, how can you then isolate and distinguish one mental factor that's involved in the outcome of the study or the data that's, the evident data that you're receiving versus another mental phenomenon that may be operating in close conjunction with one. And so if you don't clearly distinguish ahead of time, or somewhere in the process, right, maybe say between mindfulness and attention, and you're just taking data about how someone responds to a certain task, then how will you ever know how to distinguish mindfulness and attention? And I mean, I think part of the idea is that, well, we have different experiments that give different results, and we call, the one, one experiment that leads to one result, we call that mindfulness. The other one, we call that attention. But it's that then what you're actually doing, though, is you're saying that, okay, well, there is a different mental quality going on here, so you should be able to identify, what the nature of that is. I mean, when you go down to think about it and analyze it. So then that leads to the question of, where do these definitions even come from in the first place? And I would say it's something very similar, actually very similar to that very process. And when you look at the texts and you see, when you look at, several texts that were composed over periods of time, and just for instance, again, mostly a Buddhist crowd here, so I don't think you'd be all totally bored hearing about Buddhist texts, I hope. So some of you may be aware of the Gandhara textual collection. This is a collection of texts that were only recently discovered in the 90s and started to be investigated in the early 2000s by Richard, I forget his, Richard Salomon at the University of Washington, Seattle. And he's, and his team has done incredible work. But the gist of what I'm saying is some of these texts, the oldest now existing Buddhist texts that are known, um, they are philosophical treatises. Some of them are different versions of suttas and other texts that are similar. They have variations in the Pali Canon already, and that are, regular standard suttas. Some are parables, some, various things. But there's some that are just straight up like a debate on the nature of time. So it's, my point being, it's very clear that there's been active debate since the time of the Buddha and earlier of people doing this kind of process. And okay, the nature of time, that's not one of our subjects, but when we're looking at something like the mental factors, mindfulness, vigilance or metacognition, attention, concentration. So these are things where, yes, they don't maybe have an experimental design where they're trying to probe other human beings or animals and see their reactions to various tasks, but they certainly are introspecting about their their own mental states and the tasks that are going on for themselves, and then isolating and identifying various components and seeing, okay, so when this and that response happens to this and that stimulus, I have this and such and such reaction, emotion, sensation. The quality of the mind is like this. We'll call that attachment. We'll call that anger. We'll call that ignorance. So it's and then they debate about it to get more clear. And so the same with these definitions of form and the different categories within form. If we go to this text, which I posted the link to yesterday, and I I'm not sure totally on the legality of sharing portions of the text, but maybe once I figure that out, I can crop or cut out some of it, at least a few pages. It should be okay, and send it out. But it really does describe how there are these Abhidharma scholars who primarily Vasubandhu Sangha. Okay, we're getting a thumbs up, so that sounds like it will be possible to do. And then, it gives various perspectives. So, but really, it takes a very logical approach itself to figuring out the nature of form, and it does seem not like we have a historical, there's not really the written data, I'm sorry, the written record of like the debate between Vasubandhu and his counter, someone who held a different view about the nature of form, and this is what happened. Not that kind of record exists that I've ever heard about, but just by the way their texts are written and seeing how they evolve over time and seeing how there's specific misconceptions that are the targets of certain things that they write, you can tell, okay, there was actually active debate between real human beings going on, and that's how they came up with their definitions. And so the gist of this definition about, capable of materiality or suitable as form, however you want to render it, that it comes down to being just the ability to be, contacted, damaged, change, transform through contacting other things. It kind of, in some way, comes down to a similar idea as entropy, right? An increase of entropy over time. So that's sort of the defining characteristic of material phenomena, um, as it is in physics, as it is in modern day physics. Okay, and just to clarify, when I said the definition rendering as capable of materiality is from Thupten Jinpa, that book, is translated by a translator named Ian Coghlan, actually a former Sarah J. Monk, but now layperson. But Thupten Jinpa is like the editor and the sort of author of the commentary, or the I should say the contextual writings that are part of that book. So I just, I know he approved it, so I'm not sure who actually came up with that rendering originally. Okay, so any questions about definitions beyond what was just said, or any thoughts about it? Okay, good. So now I do want to direct us all to a few documents. So have people seen the uploaded documents to day 4 in the Slack forum? And if not, then I'll do the share screen and make sure that we have them all open. Let me get them open first because I got, okay. And actually, if you don't have them, please go and download them. So there's one script for each of the joints that are possible, right? 3 joints, there's a script. 4 joints, there's a script. 5 joints, I'm sorry, not 5 joints. Equivalence, there's a script. And contradiction, there's a script. So I just want to make sure you all are aware that those exist, that you can use those. And then there's also another example sheet, worksheet number 2. So we'll just quickly look through those, and please, again, in the Slack forum, day 4, channel day 4.
Yeah, and with the scripts, I can tell you that this morning, for some of us, what we did was also just going through the script, like actually reading it out, and maybe even reading out twice, switching up Challenger and Defender. And that can be a really good thing to just get the flow of these kind of debates in your body without having to think too much about it. So that might be something, if you still have a debate session coming up today, to try.
Right, and I would say, one of the key things, again, wanting this course to be more of a practice-oriented, proficiency-oriented approach to learning, is that just practicing is really the key thing, because it's a training. It's a way of learning how to think, how to, speak, first of all. But when we speak in a new way, we also start thinking in a new way. And so following these scripts can help us to just get familiar with what it is that we need, how to think in this logical way, this way that the Nalanda logic and debate allows you to take these subjects, takes any given phenomenon or non-existent thing in the whole universe, and then to learn how to revolve around it and look at different aspects and qualities of it in this 3-part syllogism process, including the use of statements of pervasion. So here we have just the counting the joints with 3 joints, color and the color of a red cloud, and then it just goes through with the exact language. So this will be good for people who are especially brand new. And for those of you who are a little bit experienced in debate, you might find it useful. And if you find, say, the slight differences in the terminology or just the organization, if it's different from what you've already learned and you find it confusing, then I would, no need to use it, right? For those of you who already understand how to do the process. So there's 3 joints, and then 4 joints, and then contradiction, and then equivalence. So we don't really have to go through those each one by one, but maybe we should actually do another, go over that script, act it out, so that everyone can just hear it being acted out. It's in the videos again, so if you want to see it, then you go and watch those videos that were already posted, right? So now in day 3, in day 3 channel in Slack, we have these videos with those debates that are in there. And then Day 4 channel, there's also extra debates that have been added that are just examples. So it's not the same as in the script, but they'll just give you more. Yeah, you just get to see that. But if you do, shall we do maybe one of these debates and then again explaining what's going on as we go through it? And that way people can just see, and then we can break out into groups and actually do it ourselves, do it each person individually. Does Marika and
Maybe one
Stefan?
thing that would be helpful is to take the one of the worksheets, so worksheet 1 or 2, and then take one example of that, and then work it out. Because I mean, I think the scripts are pretty clear, but sometimes how you get from the abstract information on the worksheet to the actual language that you need to use can be sometimes a bit tricky.
Right. So then, how about taking just two phenomena, one pair that's in the worksheet, and put it into the template so everyone can see exactly how to do that. So we have, which worksheet shall we use? Worksheet number 1 or 2? We can use, shall I do a share screen or everyone has, well, so this will be Marika and Stefan, if you two can try it, and then I can just comment if I need to, kind of do a workshop like that.
Sounds good.
So yeah, you can feel free to choose which phenomena you're going with, choose which objects.
Right. So if we are on the worksheet number 1, I mean, we can just go through example 1 from the worksheet number 1. And maybe also just for everyone, since there are so many different things, basically, this is what I'm referring to here. So the first example is the one about form and external form. So we can just do that. I mean, for those of you who were in the European practice session, that's literally what we did. So please bear with us. But in case, also sometimes maybe it's still helpful to go through it once again. So Stefan, do you prefer being challenger or defender?
I don't have a real preference. Do you have a preference?
Okay, let me start being the challenger.
Very good. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, it says here on the worksheet, it's about form and external form. Okay. So and it says the correct answer is 3 joints. Okay. So let's put A as form and B as external form. So can you posit the relation between A, form, and B, external form, in terms of equivalence, contradiction, 3 joints or 4 joints?
I accept.
Posit it.
The relation between form and external form is 3 joints.
Okay, cool. So which pervades which?
Okay, I need to focus because I'm frequently mixing this up, unfortunately.
So again, here you don't have to say A pervades B or B pervades A or is pervaded by it. You just can say it in the statement of pervasion. If something is one of them, it's necessarily the other, which is a little bit, I think, easier though.
Yeah, and it's also actually indicated here on the sheet. If something is external form, it is necessarily form.
Yeah, right. It's an advantage if you are able to read. Good point.
But this is why we're going through this, because it's so many different bits and pieces of information that, well, I'm sure, Stefan, that you're not the only one who is confused here. So,
right. So, as we read on the sheet, external form implies that it is a form, and I think the proper way to say that would then be that form pervades external form.
Yeah, but you could. It's like what I wrote in the template is something is a external form, it is necessarily a form, and if something is a form, it is not necessarily an external form. So that might be the more intuitive way to say it.
Right.
Okay. Cool. And then, something I might also, if I follow the scripts we got from today, I might also double check that as a challenger, right? So if something is an external form, it is necessarily a form, and if something is a form, it's not necessarily an external form. That's, I might say, it follows that. Well, if something, blah blah blah, the whole thing.
Yeah, or with the early group today, if you can call it that, we were following the template Marike posted yesterday, where based on, for example, given that it's 3 joints, we were iterating through the questions. Can you posit something that is an external form but not a form?
Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah. So I typically do this first, or I wrote that in the newest version of the template. We do that first, and then we try the examples. So maybe let's move on to the examples. So can you posit something that's both a form and an external form? And of course, the answer is on the sheet here.
Yeah. So I need to make it a bit bigger so I can read it. Something which is an external form and a form is, for example, the color white.
Okay. And actually, you could also just say I accept, and then I would say posit it, but we can also abbreviate it. Yeah.
Yes, right.
Okay. So can you posit something that is a form but not an external form?
I accept.
Posit it.
For example, the iSense faculty.
Okay, great. And this is, again, just literally from the template. So then, the last of the 3 joints, can you posit something that is neither form nor external form?
I accept.
Posit it.
The unicorns, for example, or better, the non-existence of unicorns. A unicorn is neither form nor external form.
Great. Yeah, I guess that was the example on the worksheet.
Great. So that's really just the most kind of bare bones way of going through the joints. And what this does now is it gives you a platform from which to launch into a logic debate. So you can take any one of those examples that was posited and now take that as your subject, as the challenger, as the questioner. Take the subject, the color white. It follows that it is a form. It follows that it is an external form. Then if they answer, they accept it, because that was what Stefan posited, so he would accept it. But now you can start to challenge it. Well, it's not an external form because it's an internal form. It follows it's not an, so now this is where you start to get creative. So this is how you bring about a logic debate out of one of these. So, the counting debate gives you the framework. Counting the joints now, going through these possibilities of 2 phenomena, it starts to give you some examples, some subjects to take on and work with to check, okay, is it really this, the things we went through in our structured hierarchy, form, external form, is it really that? Does it really fit the definition? So take the subject color, it follows that it is not external form because it's internal form. It follows that it's internal form because it's an internal mental representation that has no solid basis in the external world, right? It follows that's true because, so taking your previous reason of a 3-part syllogism, now moving it to the predicates place. I'm just assuming that the challenger is denying these reasons, right? He's saying the reason is not true, the reason is not true. So the defender, he holding his position, it's external form. Now the challenger is trying to prove its internal form. Take this object, the color white. It follows that it is only an internal representation without any basis in the external world, because it's created in the visual system of visual perception in the brain. So you would go on that kind of basis with things. And I think that using whatever knowledge, background knowledge you have, whatever subject it is. So if you have a little background knowledge in science, now most of us have a little bit, right? Most of us probably don't have a ton, but that's really going to help you, because having reasons, that when you think of a reason to debate about something, it has to be something that you're familiar with, something that you actually believe, something that you know a little bit about, so that you're able to speak about it in a reasonable and then in an more or less eloquent way, or at least communicate. You're able to communicate something that has meaning to it. And again, even looking at the 5 types of external form, and we just think about, in general, they're identified as being sort of mutually exclusive or contradictory from one another. So that's confusing to people, right? Like a tree, like a lemon. Oh, a lemon's sour, but it's also yellow, right? Isn't it both a taste and a color then? But actually, when we really stop and think about it in with just a general background and general, very general scientific understanding, then it kind of makes sense to say that they're mutually exclusive, because what actually is, again, the definitions, right? Form source or visual forms, the definition, that which is suitable, or sorry, no, not suitable, that which is the object apprehended by eye consciousness, right? Sounds, an object apprehended by the ear consciousness, the auditory consciousness. So what is being apprehended when we see a color, and what is being apprehended when we taste the sour flavor of a lemon? Are they different things? So again, just think about the production of the sense consciousnesses. So the actual molecules which produce the taste of sourness, the sour flavor of the lemon, is that what you're seeing when you see the color yellow, or is there actually different the actual physical basis of that perception, is that different, right? So it's actually they're actually different, the physical elements or particles, or whether you're I mean, we can take it into all sorts of debates, but whatever you're calling, the electromagnetic waves, if you're calling them particles or photons or waves or whatever, but the point is, the very thing producing your perception of the yellow color is not exactly the same thing producing your perception of the sour flavor, right? So that's actually the same exact view. Again, the way of understanding the exact qualities of what those particles are is not exactly the same, and it came because the conclusions were reached in different ways, but the conclusion is the same, right? So it's really just confirming that you don't have to leave behind your other knowledge when you're trying to learn to debate. The point is to deepen your knowledge. So you should use what you actually believe in your reasons, when you're going down a line of debate. So this is what I wanted to kind of get into today before we break up, is how to take a debate make it your own, right? How to bring it into a realm where you feel like, again, so some of the advice that was given in the video, for those who haven't watched it, please do, the input from the experts with our guest speakers on advice to new debaters, was to debate about things that you're curious about, debate about things that you're interested in. So this is really what's going to be able to inspire your wisdom, your intelligence, to kind of just say, I want to understand this better. I want to know. And of course, since most of us here are in the Buddhist, the Buddhist arena and interested in Buddhism, then you probably do have an interest to learn the traditional framework of that we're using here from the Dudra, the Collected Topics text, because yeah, that's valuable information for Buddhists. And to be perfectly frank, it's valuable information for anyone interested in learning about the mind, but it may be, you may more readily see its value if you're already in the Buddhist already interested. So I realized that to do that, we have to get the structure down. So that's really where I think we should just stay focused on. For those of you who are already a bit familiar with the structure, then you can go wild and pick new topics. So there's in those the second example worksheet of the counting the joints example worksheet number 2, there's a lot more suggestions of phenomena to compare. So some of them are psychological, some of them are like comparing a particle and a wave, depending on your interest. So you can do mathematical, there's some mathematical ones comparing rational numbers and whole numbers. Was that it? Integers and rational numbers, I think it was. Something like that. So again, just using other knowledge.
Yeah, and then maybe just to add on here, well, on the numbers one, I can tell you that this is also what's used, for example, by Tibetan children's villages schools. I've seen in Sarah some children that came to work came to be participants in our experiments, and they were debating about rational and irrational numbers, and it was really sweet, or about the periodic table, those kind of enumerations. But if you're like myself, a cognitive scientist, you can also say take a review of on some topics. Like we've in our group with Stefan and Dunyo, we've actually taken some reviews about mind wandering, and then try to fit it in these categories and really analyze, okay, what do we know about mind wandering? What is the definitions? What are maybe different kinds of mind wandering, and how do they relate to each other? And can we separate those? And how clear is the definition really? And we clearly found a lot of problems. And that's, of course, the point, right? That you realize where the gaps are. Because the worst part is the unknown unknowns, and what we're really doing with debate, I think, is clarifying like where we don't know things. And so you can really, even if you don't use the formal structure, if you're still not so comfortable with the formal structure of debate, even just trying to fit whatever your field of knowledge is into this structure is already very elucidating. And then hopefully we can build some groups later, but we talk more about that tomorrow. But we can think of ways that we can continue this kind of practice in different fields, maybe, of that people are interested in.
Right, and it also can help with your Buddhist studies for those of you who are interested in practicing the path and developing your minds in the way prescribed by the Buddha. So, of course, we have like the Lam Rim tradition, and it's something that you really can pick apart all of the topics within those works, within that literature. So even just going and looking at the precious human life, of course, not just thinking about the Gelugpa Lamrim, it's in all Buddhist traditions, it's a topic to be understood and thought about. But we have these specific qualities, and you can think, so I'll just relate quickly, because one of our students, who I think is auditing, so she's kind of come to some sessions, but don't think she's here now. But that's Shanti from Bangalore, and we did a debate with some of the Sarah J monks and then a bunch of lay people when we were in Bodh Gaya last year, and she was brave enough to be a defender against one of the Sarah J monks. So that was very, very good. And the question was, so can you sort of posit the the precious human life, having the 8 freedoms and 10 fortunes, sort of, not to give the whole debate, but like what's the reason why we say that being free from this sort of long life gods is not, being free from that is one of the qualities of a precious human life. So having that kind of life form is not conducive to Dharma practice. So what does it mean to be conducive to Dharma practice? And she was making a position, well, you have to have just enough happiness and just enough suffering, and where to draw the line. But then positing the example of this kind of God who has some happiness and some suffering, so why is that not conducive life to the Dharma, to practicing Dharma? And you can really start to question your, we have an understanding based on what we study, but it's sometimes we take for granted just the words of the book, the words of our teacher, and don't really start to dig down, because that becomes meaningful, right? It's like, well, what really is this precious quality of my life? What does it mean to be free, to have leisure, to have time to, to have an opportunity to make a fundamental and irreversible transformation of my being? That's something that's cool to learn more about, and to do that, we can debate each of those freedoms and fortunes. Okay, good. So what we would need to do is break out into groups and practice again. So we have now a lot that we've gone through: the basic structure of a syllogism, subject, predicate, reason. Then we have the counting debate and how to go through and create a foundation for your debate. Then we have these joints where we're specifically checking if there is pervasion or not between any two specific phenomena that you want to compare, and seeing, okay, how many different joints, possibilities can we find of some third item in its relation to these two, something which has both of these two within the third one, something which is only one but not the other, something which is only the other but not the one, and something which is neither of them. Looking at these different possibilities, these different joints. So that's a lot when we are still just learning the format of sort of how to just say it follows, take a subject, it follows this or that. So what I just want to do is just have people, again, who are really brand new, just hold to the script and do, when you get to a certain point, you can, and determine for yourself, okay, now I really want to question this part. And then you can break off from it. But start with one of these scripts, or slash template, right? And then just work through it. Keep your sort of main goals to say, okay, I want to be able to figure out and get the habit of having a 3-part syllogism, positing a subject, and then a predicate, and then giving reasons for it, and then being able to keep a line of reasoning going. So just keep in mind that structure of the 3-part syllogism. So even when you're going through the joints and you're saying, can you posit something which is A but not B? Then from there, so take the color white, it follows that it is an external form. It follows it's an external form because, and then you can give a reason. And then you can challenge what's accepted by the defender and try and just keep this kind of structure. The subject, the color white. It follows it is not, so trying to disprove it. It follows it is not an external form because it's an internal form. Because it's not a form. Because it is not something that can be, it's not suitable as form, because, keeping a 3-part syllogism, because it is not able to be contacted or touched by other phenomena, right? We're talking about a color here, right? The color white. Color white is not really tangible, right? So we can use those kinds of reasons and just try and keep that format there. Okay, any questions now, and I'll take them. If not, we'll go and do a 20-minute breakout and debate. And then we'll come back and do some maths debate. No questions. Okay. So everyone's clear. So we're using the joints script or template, but keep in mind the 3-part syllogism, okay? That's the main thing I want people to practice. So that means that you don't have to do a counting debate now, right? You can just jump right in. Okay. Okay,
so I just have one question. So what we're basically adding to the pervasion template is that at any point in time you can take one of these examples and then say, well, it's not a something, because blah blah blah, and then of course you have the normal answers to a reason, right? So then you have the either reasons not established or no pervasion, and then you can argue about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Cool.
if it just depends on which joint that they actually select when the defender selects. So if like yesterday's debate with Kabir and Damsha about internal form and external form, then they're saying if they say it's contradictory, then you just try and overcome or give a reason to overturn their position. So then you posit something which you are saying is both internal form and external form, right? If they say that something like color is external form, then you try and deny that and try and reverse that and say, no, it's internal form, right? And so you don't have to do it with every single one. Pick one that you actually, again, something that you actually feel like I actually have a doubt about this. There's actually a reason that this doesn't make sense to me, and then your reasons will naturally come from that, from your own doubts. Okay, so break out into pairs slash
I think there's a
three.
question from Andrew.
Okay,
Maybe we
Andrew has a
should-
question. Thank you for pointing that out. Come on up, Andrew.
Thanks for taking my question. This is more of a systemic question that I have. I mean, I understand that the revisions are from Shantarakshita and Jerimpoche, but still, it was a pressing question as far as this four joints is concerned and the methods of pervasion, because Nagarjuna's texts are very keen on and comfortable with contradictions. Especially in the chapters of desire and causality and the movement, it seems that Nagarjuna is fine with occasionally taking up the position of the opponent and then self-refuting it and those kinds of methods of argumentation. And there are points, I mean, unless there's clear instructions in the Karika about at what point is Nagarjuna speaking and at what point is there some Indian classical position that he's holding, it's very difficult sometimes to distinguish between these sorts of nuances. So then, but later on then with, as I mentioned, with Shantarakshita and Jerimpoche, these kind of get condensed, they kind of get more logicized, more formalized. But how can we really sustain this kind of later Madhyamaka method of arguing with Nagarjuna's kind of controlled chaos of making sense of everything and yet at the same time maybe making sense of nothing? If my question makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does in some way, but that's in my understanding of Nagarjuna, it seems like it would pretty much fall into line with this kind of logical framework. So I would need to see examples to see what you mean where it doesn't. Unfortunately, I haven't really, I haven't actually reached the Madhyamaka class. I'm in the Prajnaparamita class right now in Sarah J in my studies. So I haven't, and we do, since it's quite busy and focused, we do basically stay within the topics that we're studying at any given time, except for maybe when a lama is giving some, special teaching for some days, and we've got, a little bit of introduction. So I haven't like made a formal study of that work, so I have to just apologize for that. I'm only vaguely familiar from my, actually before I actually joined the full study program, I just did, some reading on my own, so I can't really speak to that, unfortunately. Sorry. Yeah, but I would say that again the main the source teaching or teachers of this type of logic are Dignanga Dharmakirti, and right, basically what Tsongkhapa, especially Tsongkhapa, but others as well, managed to do was to combine that framework with more or less the approaches of the Madhyamaka philosophers and really just combine it or unite it and integrate it with all the other fields within the Buddhist tradition, all the other kind of sub fields, and then make it so that we could use this kind of reasoning and logic to. But that's the thing. It's able to take on any question, any philosophical topic. So I don't see anywhere where it would be like contradictory to any of the Madhyamaka presentations. Certainly not the classical Indian scholars. Maybe some of the other Tibetans whose interpretations might, make it more difficult, but not the Indian scholars that I've seen. But yeah, I'm just underqualified to really address that. Sorry. Okay, great. But now practice. And if you have Madhyamaka questions and you're with another person who has studied Madhyamaka, then you can go for it. So I'll call you back in 20 minutes. So 2 people slash 3. If a few people manage want to get into a little group, but just please do focus on the scripts and the assignment for now as if you can. Okay, ready, set, break.
Hi, Donio, just quickly checking in. Anything to discuss or fine-tune?
Let's see. Not that I can think of. Yeah,
Okay.
good. So everything good? Are you kind of just walking around and checking on different groups, or sticking more with one and just kind of participating more with them?
Whatever makes sense. I did more participation this morning, but I'll just see now that you and Marike are here, and maybe somebody might need a partner. We'll just pair up with somebody.
I wonder, like, if I wanted to do more, like active debate together as a group in class, but again, it's hard to, here it's not as interactive, even though it's a great format as it would be in real life, where you can just shout out your answer and respond to that. So do you think the best way is to just have one person come up on stage and just do an example with sort of one person but in front of the group, or
like we did yesterday?
like we did yesterday, right?
I think that would be very good. Yeah,
That's a good way.
I think I was short. I was pretty close to speaking some encouraging words to get them on stage, because they might have some stage fright, which is of course not necessary.
Yeah.
But I think that would be pretty good, because that would encourage themselves to get involved more.
Right. I think so. Yeah. Good. Okay.
Hi, Marike.
Hello.
We were just wondering whether it makes sense to get people involved on stage as an example debate for the other participants. So not us debating, but other people.
I think so. I mean, it depends a little bit on how long it takes. So I would say, like, let's just make it practical, because sometimes it takes forever, and then we're wasting a lot of time waiting for people to be, to feel comfortable enough to come. And also because we're streaming to YouTube, maybe some people are not comfortable being on the YouTube. So, that's part of it too. So I would say that in general, I think it's probably nice to invite people to come and then wait for a little bit. But then if they don't come, we'll just do it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was also thinking one more thing is that maybe we should, like, we do have a very strong Buddhist group, which is great, but I think I can also imagine that this is scaring away some others that are not Buddhist, because then we're starting to talk about Buddhist philosophy and people have no idea what this is about. I would say that even most of the scientists have some idea, but maybe we should try to, if such questions come up in general, just to say, we'll table them, or I can talk about it separately at some other time or whatever, because I feel like otherwise maybe it gets a little bit for people that are, it's already so much new stuff basically. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, good point. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
But it's hard to manage that, and also manage that in a very graceful way. I think overall you're doing a great job also to manage all these different kinds of inputs and ideas. And so, yeah, and I think it's going really well. Just wanted to also put that out there. So, yeah, and
thanks for your.
like, I also had one of my colleagues who is joining, Ken Pallard. He was the one who brought up the one with the topic of who decides the topic. And I also promised him that he is going to be there at the second session because he's in Chicago. So this session would be a bit early.
But did I answer? Did you want me to answer it next session? I didn't realize.
No, this is fine. I already gave the similar answer. So, but then I promised I would debate with him so he can be a bit more comfortable. So anyway.
Okay, great.
By the way, I'm a bit sorry for the being always appearing so confused when we are doing a live debate on stage. When in Paris it works much better.
we didn't really plan. I didn't plan it ahead of time. So, but next
hits me a bit out of the blue.
After we come back, I think we'll try and have others. No, we're not gonna have that much time actually. It's already, how did an hour go by already? Okay, well,
yeah.
Anyway, we'll have a few minutes, so we'll just have some of the students come up, and that they'll probably be able to and willing to because they've just been debating for the past 20 minutes, so they have the energy already going.
Yep, sounds good. And otherwise, I'm pretty happy to be part of the deal anyway. So yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, let's walk around.
I get confused because I don't know in advance how you can quickly say it's 3 joints, 4 joints. I don't have in the mind to know how to evaluate, like whether you use 3 joints or whether you use 4 joints.
Yeah, so what I do is I follow the where they have this flow chart, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a chart given in the map, external, internal, color, shape.
Right.
So I kind of categorize something.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have a red cloud, then it falls as an example of a color, and the color red, cloud and the red.
Oh, that's a good. I have so many documents now.
Yeah, so this is my way of going about it.
Oh, that's good. Okay, that's good.
So if you have,
yeah,
we can do. Yeah, we'll do some other.
You can see a photon.
Yeah, but how can we see a photon?
No, not a photon. How do you say? In the light, the small. How do you say in English? Il fotone. You understand?
Fotone.
Fotone.
Well, that is a photon, isn't it? Fotone is photon, right?
The smaller element of the light.
Yeah, photon.
Photon. Okay. Take a photon. It doesn't exist.
But we can analyze it, therefore it exists.
Yes. I say, take the photon. It doesn't exist.
But the photon does exist. The photon is not a hidden phenomenon. How is... Okay. Okay. Let me ask, how is a photon a hidden phenomenon? how is the photon a hidden phenomena? What makes the photon a hidden phenomena?
It is realized in a hidden manner.
But why is it hidden if we can see it? Then it's not hidden.
If it is hidden and you cannot see, it doesn't mean it exists.
I mean, it means that it doesn't exist necessarily. So how can you prove the existence of a hidden phenomena?
The fact that you can realize it in a hidden manner with the consciousness apprehending it.
And how do we apprehend it with our consciousness?
In a conceptual way.
In a conceptual way, really. So you're saying I can think about photons and then photons appear before my mind's eye. Is that what you're saying?
No.
So what do you mean?
I think that you can it exists even if you don't see.
Okay. But if you said that I can use concepts.
With your mind even if you don't see it.
Yeah, but you said I can use concepts to see photons. So does that mean that I can?
I say that the photon exists even if you cannot see it.
Okay. And how does the photon exist without me seeing it? How do you prove that?
How I proved what?
How do you prove the existence of photons if we can't see them directly?
The fact that you can realize it with your consciousness.
Are you sure there's no other way to see photons except with our consciousness?
I'm not sure, but if there is, tell me.
I mean, what if we have very sophisticated technology in physics that can help us see photons? Does that make photons hidden phenomena or not?
Yes,
yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
I agree. But
okay.
I think that there was the idea of photon before the technique can let you see it.
Where?
In your mind.
Doesn't exist. If that which is composed of particles doesn't exist, matter necessarily doesn't exist.
Oh,
okay. Well, we just practice the format.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back in your turn. Okay. So posit the relationship between matter and that which is composed of particle in terms of 3 joints, 4 joints, contradiction, and equivalence.
I accept.
State it.
But are you is neither the color of a red cloud nor of a color. Do you ask him for an example, or what are you saying? I'm asking for him. Okay, I accept. What is it? A shoe. Take a shoe. It follows that it is not the color blue. I accept. Take a shoe. It follows that it is not the color of a red cloud. I accept. Take a shoe. It follows that it is not a color. I accept. Okay. Take the color of a red cloud and a color. It follows that they have a relationship of contradiction. Why? It follows that they do not have a relationship of contradiction. I accept. Take the subject, the color of a red cloud, and a color. It follows that there is an example of something which is both. I accept. Yeah. What is it? The color of the red cloud at dusk. The color of a red cloud at dusk. It follows that it is a color. I accept. Take the subject, the color of a red cloud at dusk. It follows that it is the color of a red cloud. I accept. Yeah. Take the subject, the color of a red cloud at dusk. It follows that it is not issued. I accept. Take the subject, assume.
Go through and see how it goes. Yeah. So you said no pervasion, right? You said no pervasion. Huh? So I would say positive.
Okay. So I have to prove that there is no pervasion, right? Okay. So what happens now? Do I have to tell you what kind of pervasion is not there? So for instance, okay. So
I think so. I'm not sure, but I think so. Yeah.
One thing that I also often find helpful is if you're not sure about the pervasion, just ask, so what is the pervasion, before you go into more discussion about the pervasion.
But in that case, then because that's the question, what is the pervasion? But then do I answer, because I think it's a 3-joint pervasion.
It's a 3-joint. It's a 3-joint because we're talking about sweet taste and taste source, yeah? So the sweet taste is the little circle in that big circle, which is the taste source, right? So, but now when we get onto the detail, because you gave the subject cake, right? Which is good. So consider the subject cake. We say that when I was questioning.
Body. I think she's American.
Is she? But she studies Tibetan with Gianfrancesco La.
No, not yet. Okay, let's do another debate.
Okay.
What about from the second worksheet, maybe?
Let me check.
You can. I can be defender now if you want.
I will try, but I think I don't know how to do.
Let's try. No problem.
Oh, I think it's this one. No, give me a second. 3 joints, 4 joints. No, sheet number 2, right?
Oh,
I have it here. I think it's this one. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Sweet taste and taste and source and taste source. Okay. Sweet taste and taste source. Okay. Okay, so how should I start? So can you posit the relation between sweet taste and taste source? Can I begin like this?
Yes. Accept.
Okay. Okay, I say it again. So can you posit the relation between sweet taste and taste source?
Accept.
Positive.
It's 4 joints.
And then can you describe? Can I say describe the 4 joints?
Okay.
What is the 4 joints? So.
Okay, there's something which is sweet taste and is both sweet taste and taste. There's something which is taste and no sweet taste. There's something which is sweet taste and no taste. And there's something which is neither.
One second, because I have to think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I just went through, just a second. So sweet taste is form and taste source, is external form, and taste source is internal form, is correct?
Sweet taste and...
No?
Oh, you're doing the first one. Okay. I thought you were just saying between sweet taste and taste. So I was playing around. But
yeah, taste source taste source means the same thing as taste. It's just another way of saying taste. Yeah, taste source, flavor, taste source, all the same.
Okay. So okay, so sweet taste and sour taste, okay, then they are inside the same category, right?
The source,
well, I guess
taste source is the same thing as taste itself. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. They just use the word source for some reason.
Okay.
But...
Yeah. Okay. I'll play straight. Okay. There are three possibilities. Okay.
And yes, that's why.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So
according to the system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can I ask something to
Yeah.
you? Yeah. So taking the case of the rabbit's horn, for instance. So would we, given what you say about the definition of form, it has to be perceived by the eye. So can we say a rabbit's horn, which does not actually exist, has a form or does not have a form?
I think you'd have to say it's a mental image, which is not a form.
Right, but what about so many other sort of, I mean, in a sense, all representations are somewhere mental, isn't it? Like we do not directly perceive the world as it is. I mean, it's only a representation of the world that we perceive. And in that sense, everything is mental.
Well, according to this system, for instance, our eyes are actually directly perceiving form.
Right, but if form has this if it has this sort of a requirement upon it that it must be perceived through the eyes, then it surely would also have a color to it. I mean, then it becomes even doubly difficult to imagine something that has form but not a shape, or not a color, or not a body. But when we say form, for instance, I don't know very much, but in the sense that Plato talks about form, for instance, so there is a certain abstraction about it. I mean, the idea, and not the thing itself.
Mm-hmm.
The form of a horse is not any particular form, and not any particular horse. I mean, or the idea of a perfect beauty, for instance, does not. I mean, it's not talking about any particular instance.
So.
Okay, everyone, 2-minute warning. So try and wrap up, and then we'll all meet back inside.
Nadia, maybe just really quickly, I was thinking, so, you know, I think it's in the prayer for Je Rinpoche where he says, may all sentient beings be liberated from the three lights. And then he mentions white, red, and black lights, right? Those don't sound like the primary colors that are in the debate textbooks. So is Je Rinpoche just taking like a completely different approach, or?
So those are the three appearances that occur in the death process. So they're not lights. I don't know. That's like a loose translation, I should say. I can't say they're not. I don't know their nature myself, but that's a loose translation, or not a common one, I would say. But it's being free from them just means that that the only one who is free from them is a Buddha, an awakened one. So it's another way of making an aspiration that someone's free of their obscurations, because that's in the tantric system. Those are types of obscurations. I'm not sure how they're classified exactly, but that's all I understand about that. It's referencing a tantric explanation of the obscurations to Buddhahood. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. Thanks. Yeah.
Good. So people are coming back. Let's see how many. Okay, still some filtering in, but we can start taking questions if there are any. And I do want to just introduce you all to our special guest today. If you can see him in the corner, the top right corner next to Dharmakirti over there. This is where's that Dignaga? I'm not sure who is who, but anyway, we have our little friend sitting in his chair over there. I don't know if people who are not Americans, if that will make any sense to you, but I think the few Americans who are here will will appreciate it. Okay. So, any questions, or shall we just continue? It's waiting for a hand to go up. Okay, so what we'll spend the rest of our time doing, which is not a lot. So I just want to say too that there's a lot of wonderful questions coming up that I'm hearing people addressing in your groups, with your partner, or if you're in a slightly larger group. And yeah, you don't have to bring all of those questions up with the whole class, but you're welcome to. So I'm not going to specifically address them unless you want to in front of the whole class. But they're really great questions, and so I just hope that you keep them in mind. And yes, Bernie is with us this morning. So, and thanks Stefan again for working on our monastery, our virtual monastery.
Thanks for the inspiration.
So I do want to, though, address some of the things that have to do with terminology that are coming up, because we didn't go through this hierarchy that we're asking you all to use and explain what does it all mean. So I gave you, we sent out a link to a book that you could go and look at and see the explanation. But since we're here now and you probably don't have that book yet, then we can spend a couple minutes. So just to clarify, form, as we're using it here, the Sanskrit rupa, is not expressing the same class of phenomena or the same object, does not have the same meaning as it does when we talk about form in the context of Plato's forms. Okay, so Plato had a very different theory and idea about cognition and how sort of the world of sensory experience comes to be from the Buddhist thinkers and the Abhidharma tradition. So this again comes out of sort of this, the Buddhist view or hierarchy that we have here is really coming from a phenomenological approach to being able to analyze the objects of experience, but to do so with a logical approach where you're kind of classifying things according to, again, how experience or consciousness arises based on various specific causes. So consciousness that has this visual quality is in relation to a certain domain of visual objects like colors and shapes. Only colors and shapes, right? So sound and so on and so forth. So form, it's a very loose way, right? It's a very, again, translation's a tricky thing, but I never could think of a better way to translate this concept or this term rupa, but it refers to just anything that has some form to it, anything that has some form to it. So anything physical. It's equivalent with matter. So anything which is matter is necessarily form. Anything which is form is necessarily matter. So I did want to just take that that I heard come up. And another thing that I heard come up is, how do you know what to say, 3 joints or 4 joints or equivalent or contradiction, when someone's asking you? If you're the defender, you're the answerer, how do you know what to answer? I mean, we haven't gone through it yet and thought through it, and then a debate, someone's sitting there clapping at you, you got to say something. So what do? You just say something. You guess. And that is how you will actually go and think through it and investigate it and see. If you didn't think through it ahead of time, which we don't expect you to compare every single pair of phenomena in the universe. So someone's now bringing you a specific pair to think about. So just say, well, maybe it's 4. Let's try that. And then you'll see as you debate it, as the challenger gives you, either counter examples or an example, or you can't find, if you just guess 4 possibilities between, something like let's just say an organic matter and a living being or something. How about organic matter and something that has an internal structure with carbon, right? You might just say, okay, 4 joints. And then when you actually start to go through it and you can't think of something that is organic matter but does not have an internal structure with primarily carbon, then you might start to go, oh, actually, I was wrong. It's just 3 joints. So that's how you would work through it. You just take a stab at it and then you work through it. Okay, so those are the only 2 points I wanted to bring up. Marika, please.
And maybe just to add to that, I think one of the expert lecturers also said in their like benefits of debate that we're just practicing dealing with that uncomfortable feeling of we always want to be correct, like that's what we've been socialized to do, and here we just learn to play with that a little bit, and then we're wrong, and it's a game anyway, so it's no big deal. But when you just are proven wrong more often, it just gets easier. Like you don't get so worked up about it anymore. So it's a great practice, so that you can actually then mentally explore. So, but what if maybe what if it were this way? Well, is that maybe more reasonable? So you can really practice looking at things from many different perspectives.
Very, very well said. And now another question in line with that is, can you talk more about how during the debate, how mid-debate, what's the format for expressing I am wrong? Well, the simple format for expressing I am wrong is that you simply reverse your position and someone gives you a top and you say, okay, that's right, I was wrong. So there's again, since we're all new and just learning it, then it gets confusing sometimes because the person who's challenging and questioning might say, wait, didn't you say before that, a person is internal form and now you're saying they're not internal form? Well, that's right. So you don't have to get confused. You just give it time, move on. And then the person who's defending, you just accept that you reversed your position. Again, the difficult thing here is just really remembering clearly what it was that was said 5 minutes ago or even 1 minute ago. So I do want to practice debate together with everyone while we have, but just such a little time now that I let you guys go on a little more than 20 minutes because it seemed like people were really having fruitful debates. So I said we would debate about some math concepts, but let's leave that because that's going to take a little more getting into. So we'll just do a few minutes. But if we can have 2 people who want to practice debating the joints so that everyone can see, and that would be great. So I'll just wait for a minute and see if we can get 2 volunteers. And I know some of you guys that have some more debate experience already, it would be, I mean, feel confident. Don't be nervous because you're debating very well. I can see.
And also, you're especially useful when you're not doing it perfectly, because those are probably the kind of doubts that everyone is going to have. So that's even better. And we're also, you can imagine that here on the stage, we're there to help you. You're not debating by yourself, but if you don't know what to say, you can just say, I don't know what to say. What should I say? That's literally how I've been debating with Dunja for the past 2 years, I think. Like every 2 sentences, I'd be like, yeah, I have no idea how to move forward. Can you help me?
Yeah, so we'll coach you. So how about if, I don't want to wait too much longer. So can I just call on someone, and would you be willing to come? Could Joe come up? How about Joe and Yeshigabo? Would you both like to come up? Is a couple here? Oh, cool. Thank you. So why don't you guys come up, and then we can use one of the examples or one of the pairs that's in the example sheet. And so how about I can just do the screen share. And if you want to, let's say one that has 3 joints, say. So we did external form and form. So how about long shape and, sorry, that which is suitable to be shown as a shape and long shape.
Okay. Who's challenging and who's defending?
You challenge since you are speaking up first.
Okay. Can you posit the relationship between A, long shape, and B, short shape, in terms of 3 joints, 4 joints, equivalence, and contradiction?
I accept. I can.
Posit it.
Long shape and short shape, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Mutually exclusive. Contradictory. Maybe.
So that was, so you chose long shape and short shape, which is actually better because now you have more room for debate, right? So now you just check with her, right? Check with Joe and ask, they're mutually exclusive because, they're contradictory because, and let her give a reason.
It is contradictory because.
Because that which is a long shape is never a short shape, and that which is a short shape is never a long shape.
Right, and another way to say that would be to say, because there is no common ground, common locus. Okay, now what does Yeshi Galpo have to do? You try and find something which is both. And what? Go ahead.
Take the subject, a ruler. It is both long shape and short shape? Is that how I phrase it?
So you would just look at one, and then if she accepts it to be long shape, for instance, then you would go and try and prove that it is short shape. So you can just take one at a time.
Take the subject ruler. It follows it is long shape.
Okay, so I have a question here. So here I would usually say chilik. I would usually say it could be either. So, but in English, I don't know how to say that.
There's no way. It's not one of the 4 answers. You say I accept or Y. That's it.
Okay, so in the tradition that I studied in, you can say sometimes they say chilik, which means there is one that could be one, and then there is one that could be other. So I need more clarification.
Yeah, so that's
what kind of rule are we talking about?
Here that will we're just gonna say that that's a cop out. no chilik here, no rangdok here. So so you pick one and then just try to uphold that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's do it. Can you ask me again?
It follows that a ruler
just
is
to know
long shape.
if people do need to leave, the hour is up. But if you can stay 5 more minutes and would like to, then for people who would like to stay, please do.
I accept. Sure, why not?
Okay. Take the subject ruler. It follows it is short shape.
Why?
It is short shape because there are things longer than it.
No pervasion.
It is not short shape because there are not things longer than it.
It is not short shape because there are not things longer than it.
So she accepted that it's not short shape. So you don't need to give a reason to prove that because she's already accepted
long
it's
shape.
not
Sorry,
short
I
shape.
misspoke. Long shape.
Oh, okay. Because there are nothing
So
longer.
take the ruler. It is long shape. because it is not, because there are not things shorter than it. Okay, take the subject ruler. It is long shape. I accept.
Okay, I probably messed this up, but it sounds like we've accepted short shape and long shape for rulers.
No, I thought that I accepted. I mean, I might have mucked up. I thought that I accepted long shape and not short shape.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's so she accepted long shape and not short shape. So one approach you could take now is to ask her why it's long shape. Take the subject, a ruler is long shape because, and now whatever kind of reasoning she has there, you try to apply that to the short shape and see if you can convince her that based on her own reason, it should also apply to short shape. That is one approach, not the only one.
Okay, so take the subject ruler. It is long shape because.
It is long shape because the length is longer than the width.
So now ask her to posit something which is a short shape and see if you can. So maybe take something like something short that we would consider short, like say, or a short, having a short length, like maybe an ant. Ask her if it's short or long.
So with that, take the subject ant. It follows it has a short shape because it is thinner than it is long.
No pervasion.
Take the subject ant. It is not short shape because it is.
So first, just ask her. Just give a thesis first before you give a reason, and just check because you don't know what she accepted yet. Does she think it's a short shape or a long shape? So check that first, and then give a reason.
Okay, so an ant is short shape.
Why?
Because it is thinner than it is long.
No pervasion.
Okay, so an ant is not short shape because it is not thinner than it is long.
An ant is not short shape.
So again, she already accepts it's not short shape, right? So you don't have to prove that. She agrees that it's not short shape. So you want to make her now think that it is a short shape. She's saying it's not a short shape already. She said it's a long shape, right?
I'm missing how that happened then. So I gave the statement.
Because she said no pervasion. You said it follows that it is short shape because it is thinner than it is long, right? She said no pervasion. So now you check. You would say, just to repeat it, make it clear for both of you. It follows if something is shorter than it is long, it is not necessarily a short shape.
Okay.
She accepts that. So now ask her, well, how can it be, or, why is it a long shape? Or what shape is it, maybe? You could say it follows it has a shape. What shape does it have?
Do I need to go there, or can I go
No, you don't
with... So a ruler is short shape because it is thinner than it is long.
The ruler is short shape. Why? Because it is thinner than it is long. No pervasion.
A ruler is not short shape because it is not thinner than it is long.
A ruler is not short shape means the ruler is long shape because it is thinner than it is long. I accept.
Okay.
So, okay, we can pause it here because we're getting, a bit over time and most people are going to want to leave, so we have a good break. Good. So what we're seeing is a real kind of, start of a real debate, right? Now, maybe this isn't the most interesting question that you've ever thought about, so it's harder to kind of think of good reasons, but actually, Jo gave a very good reason, and even her first reaction was, oh, I can't answer that because some rulers are long and some rulers are short, or, something to that effect. That's the answer called, when we say in the Tibetan phrase, chirik, it means that's just a general class of things. That's just a general class. How can I determine what it is? And I said, no, you pick something. But she actually gave a good reason to support it. Well, it's longer than it is wide. So we can call that's a good enough metric, a good enough parameter to say something's a long shape. Sure. It is. It's pretty good. That's how sort of visual perception works. We see something that's longer than it is wide, and it kind of looks long. It's like it doesn't really matter how many inches it is. This is long, and a 100-foot hose is also long. They're just because they're longer than they are wide, right? So, okay, good. And so, I just want to emphasize here, when you're asking someone questions, you don't have to give a reason right away. So I know I kept saying, think about the three-part syllogism, think about the three-part syllogism, but I mean, first go through, just posit a thesis first. So keep the order as well as the structure. So you first just posit a thesis, and then if it's denied, you give a reason. So I need to clarify that. So you start by just asking, is it a short shape, right? Take the subject, the ruler, it follows it's a short shape. Why? It follows it's not a short shape. I accept. So now you don't have to prove that it's not a short shape because she already accepts, if they already accept that. So then you just go on to another question. If you don't want to pursue that and try and, reverse her position, you can just go on to another question. Good. So we'll meet each other again in 90 minutes, and then we'll do some kind of take it for the people who aren't from the Buddhist fold and want to think about kind of topics you're more familiar with. We'll do a little bit of math related debate, and hopefully it's not terrible. I think it will be interesting for everybody. So we'll start with that after our now 80 minutes. Okay, great. Thank you so much for coming on stage and being brave, and you guys are doing great. It's really inspiring and encouraging to see. I will stay behind for a minute for more questions if anyone has them.